Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the BeQuran Podcast. I'm your host, Ali.
And I'm Fatima. In each episode, we unpack the deeper layers of our faith, history, and the challenges facing the Muslim world today.
Today, we're turning our attention to a region often overlooked, Parachinar, Pakistan, where the Shia Muslim community has endured decades of targeted oppression and violence.
We'll explore the roots of this conflict, the political and sectarian forces behind it, and the remarkable resilience of the people who continue to live and resist through it all. It's a difficult but necessary conversation, one that calls us to reflect on justice, unity, and what real empathy looks like. Let's get into it. Bismillah.
So today we're taking a bit of a shortcut, really, to try and understand a really profound issue. It's something that sent shockwaves through certain parts of the Muslim world, but, it often flies under the radar of mainstream media.
Completely.
We're talking about the ongoing oppression faced by Shia Muslims, specifically in Parachinar, a region in Pakistan. So our mission today is really to explore its history, kind of dissect the different layers of conflict, and think about what it means for, universal justice and, informed action. And we're drawing a lot from the
Insights of Sayyid Ammar Nakshawani here, which uncovered some really surprising facts and connections.
Absolutely. And what's striking, isn't it, is that disconnect you mentioned right at the start.
It really is, yeah. While some people are trying hard to bring this to light, you have so many media outlets, especially in the West, that rarely seem to notice the struggles in places like Peshawar, Quetta, or Parachinar itself, Pakistan's northwestern region.
Well, it's awkward, isn't it? For Islam itself, not just a Sunni or Shia thing. When outsiders see Muslims fighting, oppressing each other.
Exactly. And yes, media bias plays a role for sure, but it also makes you wonder, are we doing enough ourselves? Are we active enough in highlighting these kinds of critical situations?
That's a really vital point because honestly, many people just don't know the basics, the demographics, the history of Shia Muslims in Pakistan or even where Parachinar is on a map.
Right. They can probably point out cities in Iraq or Lebanon, Syria, Saudi Arabia, maybe?
Yeah, easily. And that contrast, it really highlights something important, doesn't it? This difference in how people respond to suffering.
It absolutely does. You've got those who follow Imam Ali's guidance, yeah? Oppose the oppressor and support the oppressed. Full stop. They speak out wherever they see injustice. Doesn't matter if the victim is Muslim or not, Sunni or Shia. Their empathy isn't selective. They care about suffering in Sudan or Congo or, their neighbor down the street in London.
Right, universal empathy. But then, there's the second group, and they often seem to care only if people from their own sect, their own community, are affected.
Ah, okay. So you might see really passionate posts about Palestine, for example, but then just silence on Shia killings in Pakistan.
And the excuse is often just, oh, I didn't know.
Often, yeah, I didn't know about it. And look, this selective concern, it isn't just a Sunni thing either. Some within the Shia community might also maybe inadvertently overlook the plight of Pakistani Shia.
And that brings up that powerful lesson, doesn't it? If you stay silent when others are oppressed,
one day they might come for you.
Exactly. That silence can leave you vulnerable. And this isn't theoretical. There was that demonstration, you remember, at the Pakistani embassy in London, maybe, 2007?
I recall reading about that. Yeah, it was really noted at the time that, okay, Pakistani scholars were there, definitely, but Arab, Iranian, Lebanese scholars, that was absent. It suggested this kind of geographical, maybe?
Even sectarian bias in who gets attention. So with that backdrop of sort of divided empathy and media neglect, let's focus in what does this all mean for Parachinar specifically? What makes that region so uniquely dangerous?
Well, it's consistently described as one of the most dangerous places in the world, if not the most dangerous.
Wow.
Geographically, it's fascinating. It's only about 90 kilometers from Kabul, Afghanistan, and it has this nickname, the Beak, because of its unique shape.
Beak.
Yeah, how it sort of juts out, bordering Peshawar, Nangarhar, and the coast provinces in Afghanistan.
It puts it in a really strategic but also vulnerable position. And its history, even before all this recent conflict, seems to be one of neglect.
Oh, absolutely. A long, difficult history going right back to British rule in India. It was just largely ignored. No proper roads, canals, water facilities, basic infrastructure. And they weren't given the same political rights as other areas. And sadly, that neglect just kind of carried on even after the partition of India and Pakistan.
So the groundwork was already there.
Pretty much. And the Karam Agency, which is where Parachinar is roughly, say, 45% Shia, 55% Sunni. But Upper Karam is predominantly Shia. So you had these pre-existing land disputes.
Okay.
Which then tragically just got escalated and twisted into this sectarian Shia-Sunni conflict.
The historical neglect is really unsettling. When did this sort of simmering tension really explode? What pushed it over the edge into full-blown conflict?
The big escalation really happened around the 1980s, and it was massively influenced by two huge events happening nearby, the Afghan-Russian War and the Iranian Revolution. So you had Mujahideen, militant Salafi Deobandi groups, including the Taliban from both Pakistan and Afghanistan, moving through this area.
Right through the beak.
Exactly. Through this resource-poor, geographically tricky area to get to Afghanistan to fight. And they started seeing the local Shia community as, well, obstacles, especially if they didn't actively support these militant jihadi groups.
So their presence basically poured fuel on the fire, turned a local issue sectarian.
Precisely. And that was then amplified by anti-Shia propaganda spreading through madrasas. Plus, you had support from the Pakistani government under a leader in the mid-'80s who actually wanted the area to be a central base for Mujahideen.
So official backing, in a sense, which inadvertently set the stage for just widespread violence. Suddenly, normal Shia practices like holding a majlis, a commemorative gathering, or having public processions, these were seen as acts of defiance. And that led to attacks.
Terrible attacks, yeah. This is when you saw the rise of groups like Sipai-i-Saba, the Army of the Companions, that militant Sunni group. And in response, the Shia countergroup Sipai-Muhammad formed. A cycle of violence, a brutal one. The violence systematically targeted Shia individuals, beheadings, killings of prominent figures, speakers like Allama Arif Husseini al-Husseini in '88, thinkers, poets like Jafar, even doctors.
Just devastated.
And it didn't stop. The 90s, the 2000s just saw continuous escalations, awful attacks on processions in 2007, the beheading of Shia pilgrims going for ziyarah.
Oh, that's horrific. It's a horrific timeline. It really is. But if we dig a bit deeper, it feels crucial not to just label this as Sunni versus Shia and leave it there. You mentioned other hands involved. What does that imply?
Yeah, that's a really vital distinction, say, the Ammar Nakshawani makes. He stresses there are other hands involved that have sought to divide, ruin, and destroy.
Meaning outside actors, political forces?
Potentially. Consider this. You have theological differences even within Sunni Islam, right? Debates about God's attributes, whether the Quran is created or eternal, predestination versus free will, big stuff.
Sure, deep theological debates.
But those differences, however profound, they rarely lead to people killing each other over them. So why, then, is it somehow justifiable to kill Shia for their differing theological views?
It does seem like there has to be something else driving it, an agenda, maybe.
Well, look at the bigger picture. You see groups like ISIS, infamous for their brutality against Shia, but they're conspicuously absent from other conflicts, like Palestine, for instance.
Sayyid Muhammad points out how powerful propaganda can be. If you just label an area controlled by the Shia, suddenly maybe many Muslims feel compelled to go fight there.
But for other conflicts,
For other conflicts, maybe business interests, geopolitics, whatever, take priority. That same religious fervor isn't necessarily ignited.
it suggests manipulation. So it's not just faith. It's about power, manipulation, strategic division. It seems that way. But, despite all this division and conflict, we do see examples of peaceful coexistence elsewhere. That's important to remember.
Where?
Oh, absolutely. You see it in Lebanon and Muscat, Oman, in Iran, too. Places where Sunni and Shia communities live together, work together, quite harmoniously. Right. And interestingly, the period when Imran Khan was leading Pakistan around 2019, that was widely described as probably the safest time.
For the Pakistan-Afghan border area recently.
And his approach was different, you're saying. Yeah. His whole vision for Pakistan seemed rooted in trying to unify, not focusing on sectarian conflict. And some argue his current imprisonment might actually be contributing to renewed tensions now.
How so?
Well, fueling these kinds of divisions can be a very effective way to distract from other big political or economic problems, can it?
A classic diversion tactic?
Possibly. And it's also crucial, absolutely crucial, not to paint all Sunnis with the same brush here. Many, many Sunnis in Pakistan and India
are deeply devoted, ardent lovers of the Ahlul Bayt, the Prophet's family. So friendship and unity are definitely possible.
Absolutely possible. It shows it doesn't have to be this way.
Which brings us back to the media's role, or maybe its lack of a role. The sources paint a pretty grim picture here.
The suffering of Pakistani Shia just doesn't get eyeballs.
It seems not. It doesn't sell, apparently. It doesn't get Instagram likes.
And what's really concerning is that even some Muslim media outlets fail to cover it properly.
It almost sends this message that, well,
Shia leaves don't matter.
that's a harsh reality. And it raises a big question for all of us, doesn't it? Are we being proactive enough? Are we building a vision for our future, engaging in fields like media that can, make or break the image of Islam globally? It's fundamental.
We're called to care about the affairs of all Muslims. The Prophet's saying is so clear. Whoever wakes up in the morning and does not care about the affairs of the Muslims is not a Muslim.
That's a powerful reminder.
And our religious leaders, the Marjas, the leading Shia authorities, they also play a vital role. Ayatollah Sistani, for example, has issued very clear, strong statements honoring the martyrs of Parachinar, showing that leadership concern is there.
So, given how incredibly delicate this situation is, what's the path forward? It sounds like dialogue and diplomacy has to be central.
It absolutely has to be. Even when it's difficult, even with groups you might see as adversaries, you have to be willing to sit down and
engage, even with elements of the Taliban.
It is. But look at the Prophet Muhammad's example. He forged the Hudaybiyah peace treaty. That was a pragmatic engagement, a truce, with people who had actually killed his followers.
A powerful precedent for diplomacy over conflict.
Exactly. And history shows us, doesn't it? Attempts by, say, the United States to just militarily finish groups like the Taliban, they ultimately failed. It underscores that you need political engagement.
So, what does that look like on the ground?
It means involving the tribes, Shia and non-Shia, in the political process, actively bringing them in. And it means cultivating more Shia voices, more diplomats, more people in media, ensuring their perspective is actually heard and understood.
And finally, looking at the people enduring this, the communities in Parachinar. What can we learn from their resilience? It seems extraordinary.
It truly is. There's this powerful analogy Sayyid Ammar uses. The Shia are like red gold. The more you put them in the fire, the more their quality, their faith increases.
Wow, red gold. You learn so much from their resilience, from mothers burying their sons and finding strength by quoting the steadfastness of Zainab, the Prophet's granddaughter, after Karbala. That connection to history, that need to bear witness, it fuels their endurance. Given the incredible resilience that we see in communities like Parachinar, and drawing from that deep historical wellspring of their faith, it leaves us with a question, doesn't it? Beyond just understanding the facts we've discussed, how might we, as individuals, translate this knowledge into something proactive, into a real force for global empathy, for truly informed advocacy, so that no suffering like this goes unnoticed or unaddressed? Agalim and Abud, thanks for joining us on this podcast episode.
Until next time, stay curious, stay grounded, and keep seeking the truth.